If there was one piece of financial advice that I want people to avoid, it is probably this one. And it's a clip I'm going to show you, and I'm going to break down exactly where and why it is dangerous and expensive for you. But here's the thing. Videos like the clip I am going to show you always leave out one specific detail. Now, because the video is rather long for a short form video, I'm gonna get pretty close to the point instead of showing you the whole 2 minutes. That would be rather boring. So let's go ahead and play the clip. I'm going to show you where and why people continue to show me these clips and assume that this is the right way to do things and that this is for them, when in reality, 90% of the time, it is not.
Money in this 401k is a trap, all right? Because at 59 and a half, you're gonna get taxed on that money. So let's just do some math, right? Let's say you work 20 years, you've been putting money into this 401k consistently, and you got $200,000 at 59 and a half. Now you're gonna pay taxes on the growth of the money. So let's just say you at a 25% tax bracket. What's 25% of 200,000? So that's $50,000 that's going immediate, right out the gate. Then you're talking about 20 years, inflation, cost of living. You really walking away with $100,000. So when you really look at it,
Let's pause and take notes real quick. I even in editing had to go back and reevaluate because I think he actually played himself, unfortunately, at least looking at the numbers. And here is why. First, you are not taxed at one time. For example, he said you got the $200,000 and then you're taxed at the 25% rate. No, you are not. In retirement, if you had $200,000 at 59 and a half, at no time should you take your entire 401k balance out and get taxed at the highest tax bracket. No one in their right mind does that. We have what is called the 4% rule. That is a rule of thumb, but you are slowly piecemealing that money out. We call it the distribution period because you are, again, distributing that money out over retirement for a few reasons. Number one is you want to stretch it out for as long as possible so that you don't run out of money. For example, the entire purpose of it is if the market grows at 7% and inflation is 3%, that leaves you with 4% of money to live on. If you have $2.5 million in your 401k or just your stocks and bonds and things of that nature, then that means that you can have a $100,000 retirement every single year and never run out of money. That's how it works on paper. Now, in reality, market ebbs and market flows, but that's the entire point. What I wouldn't do is take out $2.5 million and get taxed this year and just sit on the cash. No one does that. So you are misrepresenting the case. Like that is what a lot of insurance people do, is say, well, if you did this and you took it all out, you get taxed at 25%, and now you only have $100,000 because of inflation and all this stuff. That's the first error. That is the first wild thing here to make something else seem great by misrepresenting, and some would say lying, about how 401ks actually work. The other part is with that 200,000 that allegedly goes down to 100,000, you do realize that even in retirement, if you are doing that 4% rule and just piecemealing and taking money off the top, the money still grows in retirement. I think there are some people that don't realize that, maybe because they're insurance salesmen and not financial advisors, and they don't actually manage the investments of people. They don't realize that. I've had retirees who come in, we look at their portfolios, and this is what dividend investors do, right? This is why people invest in dividend stocks, because their stocks are still growing and they're living off of the income from their what? Those dividends. And usually those dividend stocks, at least they're supposed to, grow. So, for example, again, as I mentioned, if the stock is still growing or the portfolio is still growing at 6.5% or 7%, you're not going down from 2.5 million or 1 million all the way down to 100,000. You're staying even, or in some cases still growing, and you're taking money from the growth. You're taking money from the income and paying taxes from that. That is the point. That's how retirement is supposed to work, even as you are withdrawing. It ain't supposed to go down to zero. It's not supposed to be cut in half. He's assuming that You just took it out and it just doesn't grow at all in retirement or at 59 and a half. So even if you were to retire at 59 and a half, which most people do not, it's still supposed to grow because you have not, and you're not supposed to just rip it all from the stock market at one time and pay the highest tax possible. Why would you do that? You are purposely changing the facts or doing the worst move possible here.
Pretty much traded your time and worked for free for about 10, 15 years. That don't make sense. When I actually quit my job at Pepsi, I pulled that money out of my 401k. Yes, I paid penalties and there was some taxes I had to pay on it, but I was okay with losing a little bit of money on the front end because I knew that I could make way more money over 20 years, me controlling and investing versus leaving it in this vehicle. So the vehicle that I just said earlier, I utilized insurance. So I took the money out of my 401k and I put it into insurance. And then I went and borrowed against my insurance to go buy a 6-unit apartment building. And I paid $110,000 for that apartment building. I still have it today. It's worth $575,000. So if I would have left that money in my 401k, I wouldn't be making the money off that one building.
There were a few things in that half of the clip that were also quite strange, and numerically you may have played yourself if that's the case. So first, interesting, if you take your money out of your 401k, do realize you are likely paying a minimum of 20%. A 10% early withdrawal penalty, and then you are paying taxes. Now, check this out. He said that if you withdraw $200,000, you are paying 25% in taxes. And that's a lot. So if he took out $200,000 to go and buy this property, he said he was paying a little bit. Now, why is it a little bit in the taxes and penalties when you do it, but at 59 and a half is not a little bit? Okay, that's a contradiction because he said it's 20%, right? But he didn't say what the taxes and penalties were when you withdraw now. And again, it's 10% just for early withdrawal, and it's going to be the same amount of taxes in either case because it's the same $200,000. All right? You take that for what you wish, but those should be quite close to each other. And I would argue 20% is 20%, and that's not something that I'm willing to pay if I can defer that. Okay? That's number one. Now, the next thing is there's a little bit of a contradiction here. You're not comparing apples to apples here just yet. What happened is you took out the 401k, you paid taxes and penalties on it, you took the money, the $100,000, paid another commission to the insurance company, and then loaned yourself the money again, and then got what appears to be a mortgage on a building worth $500 and some odd dollars. That is what happened. All right. So now you have a building worth that amount of money. Now, in reality, on paper, just like I own my mortgage, right? $400,000 mortgage minus whatever equity I have. So right now, I am still technically in debt on this house until it is paid off. So if I only own the house, which is not the only thing I own, if I only own the house, I'm still negative, $300,000, for example. I only have $100,000 in equity. The house is worth $400,000. I'm still negative $300,000, right? Now, what about the 401k here? You're talking about making more doing that than what you would have had in the 401k. Is that true, though? Is that true? If you had left the $400,000 in the 401k for 20 years and didn't touch it, the market on average makes 7%. Okay, it makes 7%. If you did that, never touched it for 20 years, that's actually worth $773,000, not touching it at all. Okay, there's that. Now remember, on a building, yes, it's income producing, most likely assuming you're getting renters, which I think you could. And the building will appreciate at some degree, but also, it also has maintenance fees that you do have to contend with. But also, let's not forget that the 401k also would have had a match had you stayed. Now, I'm not saying that you have to stay there and all that type of stuff. I'm not suggesting that you would, but being able to have something that has zero maintenance, I don't have to have a commission, and the only way that you got that building was to pay the taxes and penalties to withdraw it, then pay a commission to get the insurance policy, which is a commission that you didn't even disclose how much that even was. Those are a lot of steps here. You still could have left Pepsi, left the money there or roll it over, and still, if history is the same, right? Not a guarantee, still could have had that $700,000. That could happen, right? That could happen. Or you still had the option of loaning yourself the money from the 401k. That is still an option too. 401k loans are a thing. I'm not saying they're the best thing possible, but you could still have done that, kept the 401k, loaned yourself the money, and still got the building. Another option, depending on the equity that you have on your current home, your primary residence, there's an option to loan yourself your own equity and buy another property. Both home equity and loaning from your 401k, or if you even have the cash, there are other ways to get this $100,000 and do that without having to pay an insurance broker all this crazy commission that he did not tell you how much that commission was. And then also he didn't tell you how much time it was from the time that he had to pay that $100,000 into that policy and the time that he had to use that cash value for. In many cases, I can't say for his because I'm not looking at his documents right now, but in many cases, because I've reviewed these policies over and over and over again, there are people that say, hey, I got this policy, I put money into it, and this did happen to Kyle Busch. This happened recently where he was missold a policy and they think that, hey, I'm getting this thing, I'm going to be able to use it immediately, but they actually find out it takes 5-10 years sometimes, usually like around 7 or so, where they can actually use that loan to do something with. But the truth is, does it make sense if you have the assets here to pay taxes and penalties once, then pay a commission to loan yourself the money that you already had? You are paying twice to have money that you already had. I'm not sure that makes sense unless you are the person getting paid. Either you're the government or you're the insurance salesman. When in reality, you could have just loaned yourself the money from the 401k and skipped the commission. Or if you have some other asset like your own home, loan it that way. Again, I'm not saying I don't like 401k loans. I don't like home equity loans either. I also don't like these expensive policies, so I'd rather just do it from cash or some other method. And that's just me, right? That's just me. I like to use my assets for what they are as opposed to trying to force insurance into some crazy investment. But again, 20% taxes, right? Not when I don't have to. But those are things you have to take a look at because there were a lot of details completely missing in that example to say, hey, I did this thing that was unconventional and it ended up in this thing that sounded really cool at the end of the day, which if it is, great for you. But it's presented to everybody as if this is something that the vast majority of people are doing or the vast majority of people aren't really paying attention to. This is some great wealth hack when in reality, you might have messed up yourself because you paid a lot of money to go from 200 down to 1, paid more to get a loan on something for 570 something thousand when you may have just been able to save more to get to that 100,000 and just do it straight up. That might have been a better option either way. Or take the 401k loan and do it that way and stay at Pepsi for another 5 or 6 years, paid off the loan and still had the building and paid it off that way. Because at the end of the day, because you have a mortgage on that, at least it sounds like it, right? I could be wrong, but if you still took out a mortgage on it using the loan from the insurance, you're still paying, or at least the tenants rather, are still paying their mortgage. All you needed was the initial loan. That's all you needed. You needed the income for the loan. There are other ways to secure that via business or what have you. There are other ways you could have done that without paying 20% in taxes and an insurance policy that you also still had to pay for. That's all I'm saying. And then putting it out for everybody else to also go and then get an insurance policy to help fund this. That, you see what I'm saying? That's the problem here. So that's what I'm saying here. I just want people to be more informed on how those things work. And when you're dealing with people in the financial space, you have to be very careful on how people get paid. That's why I'm happy where I am in the financial space, because I'm not based on commission. I just You just pay me to do the plan. It don't matter whether you do insurance, whether you buy a stock, whether you do your 401k or not. My job is just to answer your questions, come up with the plan. You do what you want to do with that plan after the fact, and that's it. I am impartial to what it is you decide to do after that, as opposed to my job is to sell you this policy, sell you this stock, and I get a percentage of that cut. That ain't the way I work, right? And that is the main thing here. That's why you always want to consider the source. Is that person paid via transaction? Do they get paid more if it's a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger policy? Or do they not get paid more based on that? Is it just a flat fee whether you buy from them or not? Those things do matter, and that's why I want you to be more educated as you're listening to people like me or other places or books or wherever, because you don't want to make, tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes, because it is hard to come back from those. If you want to learn more about some of the ways that people can trick you into those expensive mistakes, you want to check out these videos right here.